Escape 2 doors.
After a long voyage through space, traversing the endless expanse, I have finally returned to demonstrate something which to me is earth-shattering. The device in front of you rotating on my turntable is that solution. A solution to what, you might ask? For me, it's about 3 years of failed attempts to try to make a retro machine accept anything other than this. I liken it to the sound of dogs incessantly barking in the background or nails on a chalkboard. Put that thing out of its misery. Thank you. First I'll explain how I built it, and then I'll explain why. I can't stand all the advertising on YouTube, so you won't see any here. Took about a week and a half, this stuff arrived, which was way faster than I anticipated, and everything sat in my mailbox, and I was just itching to put this thing together. I had a few of the items already on hand, but I had to order some ROM chips. These are the M27C128s, or you can use the M27C256. Next thing I didn't have was the SN74LS688N chips. I got 10 of those, 5 in each package. Sure, I got resistors, but I didn't have the A103J 10K 5-pin resistor. They save a lot of space, and they make soldering this thing together a breeze. So that's all the electrical components that I needed to buy. I already had the capacitors, that's the 0.1 microfarad, and I stole the jumper pins off this controller card that I got for free because it was dead on arrival. And lastly, the PCB. Designed by Wiretap, and I will leave the link to the Vogons page where you can get the Gerber file if you want to make this yourself. So I usually use this kind of a universal circuit board when I'm building electronics projects with, 555 timers, that kind of thing. So this was kind of exciting for me to have a professionally made PCB, and they really do look good. ROM chips look just fine, but I did notice with these 74LS chips, well, there's 2 of them that are a little bit longer, but the leg spacing seems to be the same, so I don't think it should be a problem. Love these resistor packs. That's a convenient way to have all those resistors in one small little package. I bought these 28-pin IC sockets a while ago. Didn't realize how much they would come in handy again. I bought this bin of IC sockets for another project. Fortunately, there was the 20-pin sockets that I'm going to use for the 20-pin chips, because I don't know if they're any good, and I don't want to have to resolder if they aren't. So that's the very short list. Now it's time to get to soldering. Well, there's plenty of space on this board, and there's so few components, so I don't think you have to follow any particular order to put this thing together. I just went with the IC sockets to begin with, because I wanted to get the big stuff out of the way. That's what it looks like. Next, I'm going to put in the 10K resistor pack. So I am using resin core solder, but I added some extra solder paste just to make it go a little better. My soldering iron tip is giving me grief. It's definitely time to order a new one. Next, I put in the 2 capacitors. Those are the 104s. Yeah, and that looks like a big sloppy mess. It'll clean up nice. I'm putting in the jumper pins. Got to be careful with the heat on those because the plastic on the other side will melt and the pins will fall through and they'll be uneven. Snipping off the legs on the capacitors, and finally cleaning up that filthy board. Next thing to do is to insert the ICs, but first I need to program that M27C128. And my first little hurdle, and that is when I select ST, the only chip that comes up is the 512 version of this. So in my previous video, I ran into a similar issue, so I started to search around for an alternate. When I selected Fairchild, that's the NM27C128, it can successfully read the ST chip and tells me that it's completely blank, and that saves me having to expose this to the UV light for 15-20 minutes or whatever it takes. In contrast, if I selected the AM27C128, and try to read the chip, it gives me an error, which I could probably solve just by deselecting the check ID as I did in my previous video. Only takes 5 seconds to program the chip. Next thing I do, prepare the chip to be inserted into the socket. And as I receive them, the legs are a little bit wide, so I just bend them on the desk like that, and you have to be careful because it's really easy to overbend them. In it goes. Oh, that's a satisfying feeling. The last thing to do before I put this into a computer is to install the 2 jumpers, and in my configuration, jumpers 1 and 3, and that seems to work just fine. Okay, it's great and all, but why? Well, this is why. My first video, released January 5, 2023, and I had already sat on these things for months and months. I happened to find all of these machines for this incredible deal, and I bought the whole lot just because of this one 486, the Leading Edge Fortiva 5000. I had a lot of hope for this machine. I called it the cherry on top, and in my Under the Hood video, I turned it on and was greeted with that sound. And no matter what I did, after the last 2 years, I have been fighting with this thing, trying to get it to accept anything other than that original hard drive. Which leads us to why XT-IDE. Well, in Necroware's video a couple of months ago, he explained how it works with 386 and 486 machines. And the best part, he was doing it with an old ISA networking card and a ROM chip. So other than the price of the ROM chip, it was pretty much free. And in a multi-part video, he explains every last detail that you need to know about this. So it occurs to me, in that Pentium 1, there's one of those ISA networking cards. So I took it out of the IBM Pentium 1, and sure enough, it has the 28-pin socket ready to have a ROM chip slammed in there. And I had just recently purchased some extra EEPROM chips. Now they are the C512 variety. They're not recommended, and it's better off with the C128s or the C256s. Anyway, I tried some creative copying and pasting, and I programmed the chip. I put the card into the machine. I set the correct address, and nope. It did recognize the SD card and my CF card, but it failed formatting the disk, it failed the DOS install, it failed programs, it corrupted files. It was so disappointing. I thought I had finally found a solution. A cheap solution, too. And then I found AnotherMaker's video, and he said he was able to assemble the mini ISA ROM card for $4, which seemed like a perfect price for me because I don't even know if this is going to work with the Fortiva 5000. It's a gamble. The pre-made XT-IDE cards are usually around $100, with shipping, etc. So I wanted a cheap solution, and this way I could make multiple cards. In his video, he has the link to his GitHub where you can download the bin file to do the programming. He did have the Gerber files for the PCBs, but when I used those, it came up as 4-layer as opposed to 2-layer, and that was going to be double the price. So I went to the Vogons page where Wiretap has posted that information, and right at the bottom of this, he has the Gerber file link there. It came up as 2 layers. I chose a black PCB. It was $5 for 10, and they actually sent me 11 boards. So it's time to stick that board into the Fortiva 5000 and see what happens. I was kind of expecting it would be no different than my previous attempt with the ISA networking card, but here it is. Let's see if it actually recognizes the card. That's promising, but we need to do further testing. First test is with the CF card to see if it recognizes that. And sure enough, it does. But with my previous attempt, it corrupted the card and I needed to reformat it, which I wasn't able to do with the network card. So rather than do a full install, I hit F3, exit out of that, go to F disk because my disk was F'd. I do a format/S to put the system information on. It comes up with the drive C error, which makes me concerned. But with my previous attempt, I couldn't even get this far. Now there is a bit of flickering on the screen that was also making me concerned, but whatever, it got to 100%. So let's restart the machine and see if it works. All of my previous attempts, it would fail right at this point, but sure enough, there we go. We're into DOS. I restart the machine because I need to fix the BIOS. There's a few things that are wrong with that. The CR2032 that I put in there, I disconnected that, so I lost all the previous settings. I just want to make sure that it's going to restart and go straight into DOS. I still haven't even turned on the external cache. And it absolutely does. I restart. And next I'm going to fully install DOS 6.22, which of course flawlessly installs. I won't even bother to show that. And back into the system, waiting patiently to see if this thing will work. What do I get?
Jackpot.
Next up is Windows 3.1. When I tried it with the previous attempt, it fully installed Windows 3.1. But when I tried to load Windows 3.1, it came up with this display driver error. And no matter what I used, whether it was the SD cards or the CF cards or hard drives that I tried, it would do the same thing. It would fail at that point. So I was beginning to think that this was going to work out. And sure enough, Windows 3.1.
Fully functional, including the fly. Oh, yeah. Get out of my video.
So this is extremely promising. I've got DOS installed. I've got Windows 3.1 installed. I've got the Phil's Computer Lab starter pack installed. I don't have a CD-ROM connected, though. That's the next thing to figure out.
CD check. Here we go. The drive works.
Next thing I test is the sound card, which I've installed.
Okay.
Why do I have to do everything?
Next up, Day of the Tentacle. That works too. In my previous attempt, Duke Nukem would crash even before it got to the opening screen. So this was quite a change.
Yeah, piece of cake.
Even Doom 2 worked. But most importantly to me, it's whether it'll play MIDI files correctly.
Nice bird.
MIDI playback is 100% silky smooth. I decided to try a Windows program just once again for further testing. Micrologic has this fantastic tutorial song that I recall from years and years ago. Let's listen to it now. So without a doubt, Compact Flash works 100%. What about an SD card? %. Fully functional with an SD card, and I tried several that I have. So what about IDE hard drives? These are just the pile of hard drives that I had left over from the lot of computers. So the one that failed, well, that may not have worked in the first place. I don't even know. What I didn't have any luck with was the SATA drive. And right away you can tell that there's something wrong here because of the characters. So I tried a few different SATA drives and I got the same thing every time. It could just be the adapter. Maybe this computer combination doesn't work. But anyway, I don't care because all I wanted was CF cards or SD cards, and I know for a fact that they work flawlessly in this machine. After all these great results, I decided to have a look at the system information, and to my surprise, this 80 megahertz chip is only running at 118. And that's quite a bit less from a DX266 chip, which usually goes about 144. So I decided to pull the chip and try a DX266. And just as expected, 144. It correctly recognizes the L1 and L2 cache. But that sound you're hearing is the power supply. And before I consider this complete, that's going to have to get fixed. I have a fully functional Fortiva 5000. And this, of course, is thanks to the fine folks that created XT-IDE. Without it, I'd be stuck using the original hard drive, which means I wouldn't use this machine, and all the hype of this being the cherry on top would have been a very sour cherry. I forgot to mention Windows 95 loaded up without a glitch. But ultimately, this was about silencing this machine. And now that I've eliminated the hard drive noise, that fan needs to be fixed immediately. First I gotta pull the extra stuff out of there, and that bracket where the old noisy hard drive sat, that prevents you from lifting the power supply directly out, which would be a much easier way to do it. Without removing the motherboard, I just slid that whole drive carriage forward, and that allowed me to slip the power supply through. And oh no, I just voided my warranty. And there's only a tiny bit of dust in there, and all the parts look pretty good. There's no bulging capacitors, so I'm going to proceed with the fan swap. Removing the old noisy fan. And boy, do I hate doing that. And to make matters worse, I gotta do it again. Done. The wires are soldered directly onto the board, so there's no convenient connector on that. And I'm going to twist these wires together and protect them with the shrink tubing in case I decide to put a resistor on it to slow the fan down. If I think it's too fast, does it work? Yes, it does. Into the power supply. Tidy up the wires. Put the screws back in. Slide it back in. That's just a little precarious. And there it is. Slide this in till it goes click. Get that crap out of the way. So it's a noticeable difference. It's a pleasant tone as opposed to that annoying wee. But the microphone on my camera barely picks up the difference now. So while I was endlessly searching for information about this machine, I stumbled across Daewoo 2800's post. over at the VCF forums. He was looking for the service manual, so I started an account there and I said, hey, have you found this yet? Of course he had, but interestingly, it was somebody at the VCF forums that found that manual at a garage sale, and they were kind enough to scan it and put it on the Internet Archive. So since last February, Daewoo 2800 and I have been racking our brains trying to find a way to outsmart this machine. He was hoping to have the BIOS modified, and maybe that would allow for other hard drives. But I think I have completely solved all these problems with XT-IDE. And because it worked so well for me, I decided to make a second one, and I'm going to send that off to Daewoo 2800. By my next video, I hope to have a response from him and find out if it allowed him to use whatever hard drive he chooses. I've really enjoyed my back and forth conversation with him, trying to outsmart this machine, and I wish him great success with this. There may only be 2 Fortiva 5000 machines out there, but regardless, this little board can solve problems with the Phoenix BIOS, but I have never come across a machine that was so difficult to get it to recognize other hard drives. Sometimes the road to success is a long and winding path, but that makes the success that much sweeter. Maybe XT-IDE can solve your problems too, and I really hope this video helps. Next video, Unit Chip Part 2. Time to get back to that. And of course, this fantastic Leading Edge Fortiva 5000. Yeah!